The crowd falls silent. You can feel the energy shift. The voice begins softly but carries the weight of truth. You've been running after love, after validation, after approval, running after things that were never running after you. But let me tell you something powerful today. When you stop chasing, you start attracting. When you stop begging for attention, you begin to command it. Life does not reward desperation. It responds to confidence, to calmness, to peace. The reason most people lose control is because they care too much about what doesn't care about them. They give energy to things that drain them. They beg for people who barely notice them. The one who cares less is not heartless. He is focused. He is wise. He understands that true power lies in detachment, not indifference. Myles Munroe used to say, the greatest tragedy in life is not death, but a life lived without purpose. And many of us are living without purpose because we're chasing people instead of pursuing destiny. When you know your value, you stop discounting yourself to be accepted. When you understand your purpose, you stop explaining yourself to those who don't deserve your explanation. Who cares less controls it all, because caring less is not about apathy, it's about mastery. Mastery of emotions, mastery of attention, mastery of self-worth. When you know who you are, rejection can't shake you. When you understand your worth, silence doesn't scare you. Listen, attraction is the byproduct of alignment. When your mind, your energy, and your actions align with your vision, you don't need to chase. Things begin to move toward you. Opportunities knock. People respect you. Doors open. Because you've stopped trying to prove and started to become. There's a difference between being wanted and being needed. Most people crave being wanted. But when you live in your purpose, the world needs you. And that's the shift. Stop asking for a seat at tables that can't see your value. Build your own table. When you do, those who ignored you will start knocking at your door. The moment you detach, you rise. Because detachment is freedom. And freedom attracts everything you once begged for. When you chase, you communicate lack. When you attract, you demonstrate abundance. People can feel that. Energy speaks before words ever do. Become so grounded, so fulfilled within yourself that nothing external can shake your peace. Because when your peace becomes expensive, chaos can no longer afford you. And that's the secret. Control is not taken, it's earned through self-awareness. When you care less about being liked and more about being aligned, you begin to walk differently, talk differently, move differently. That is when life starts to serve you instead of drain you. So stop chasing. Start becoming. Because when you evolve, everything that belongs to you will find its way to you. Remember, what is meant for you will never require you to beg. You only attract on the level of what you believe you deserve. Raise your standard and watch everything around you rise with it. When you stop chasing, you stop giving power away. Think about that for a moment. Every time you run after something or someone that isn't running after you, you are silently saying, you have something I need. And that statement alone weakens you. It puts your happiness, your worth, your peace in someone else's hands. You become a prisoner of their approval. And the truth is, the more you chase, the further it moves away, because energy doesn't lie. Desperation pushes things away. Confidence draws them closer. In life, most people don't realize how much power they lose by constantly chasing validation. They wake up every morning trying to prove themselves to people who don't even think about them. They check their phones, waiting for a message that might never come. They bend their standards just to be accepted. They smile when they want to cry, just to fit in. And slowly, without even noticing, they start shrinking to please others. The light that once made them unique begins to fade because they're too busy trying to be liked. But when you stop chasing, something incredible happens. You start to remember who you are. You begin to walk differently, speak differently, think differently. You realize that you were never meant to beg for what you deserve. You were meant to attract it by becoming it. You stop performing for people's attention and start living from your truth. And that is where your real power begins. Imagine a person running after a butterfly. The more they chase it, the more it escapes. But the moment they sit down and remain still, the butterfly returns and lands gently on their shoulder. That is life. The things that are meant for you come naturally when you stop chasing and start aligning. The things you once begged for begin to find you because you've stopped radiating lack and started radiating confidence. Chasing always comes from fear. Fear of being alone, fear of being forgotten, fear of being overlooked. But when you understand your worth, you no longer fear being alone because you are never truly alone. You have yourself. And once you honor that, you attract people who honor it too. The person who knows their value never needs to beg for attention. Their presence commands it. In relationships, we see it every day. One person gives everything. Time, love, effort, while the other gives the bare minimum. The giver believes that if they do more, they'll be loved more. But love doesn't grow in the soil of desperation. It grows in the ground of respect. When you chase someone who takes you for granted, you are handing them the remote control to your emotions. They decide when you're happy, when you're anxious, when you're broken. But when you stop chasing, you take that remote back. You reclaim your peace. Even in success, this truth applies. People chase money, chase fame, chase recognition, and end up exhausted and empty. But those who focus on purpose, growth, and discipline naturally attract wealth, opportunity, and respect. When you stop chasing outcomes and start building yourself, success has no choice but to find you. A tree doesn't chase the sun, it grows toward it. It stands still, rooted firm, knowing that everything it needs to flourish is already within reach. When you stop chasing, you teach the world how to treat you. You send a silent message that says, I am whole, I am grounded, I am enough. And the world responds accordingly. Opportunities that once ignored you start calling your name. People who once overlooked you start paying attention. Not because they suddenly changed, but because your energy did. Your energy stopped pleading and started leading. It's the same in friendships. Have you ever noticed how you always reach out first, plan everything, make all the effort, and yet the other person never seems to care as much? That's because you've taught them that your presence comes cheap. But when you stop chasing and pull back your energy, something shifts. They begin to notice your absence. They begin to realize your worth. Sometimes silence is the loudest statement you can make. Sometimes not reacting is the strongest move you can play. The one who stops chasing is not cold-hearted, they're self-respecting. They're not rejecting others, they're choosing themselves. And that's what most people don't understand. When you stop running after what isn't meant for you, you create space for what is. You stop wasting time convincing others to see your value and start surrounding yourself with those who already do. There is strength in stillness. There is power in patience. Chasing is the language of the insecure. Attraction is the language of the confident. When you stop chasing, you start moving with calm authority. People can feel it when you walk into a room. The energy that says, I don't need anything from you, but I'm open to share something with you. That kind of energy is magnetic. It pulls people in without effort because authenticity always wins. Look at the people you admire most. They're not chasing anyone. They're busy building, growing, creating, serving. And because of that, the world comes to them. They attract opportunities because they are too focused on becoming the opportunity. That's what happens when you stop giving your power away. Every time you chase, you dilute your value. Every time you pause, reflect, and move from a place of purpose, you amplify it. You cannot chase something and expect it to respect you. You can only become something so strong, so whole, that it cannot ignore you. So stop trying to prove yourself to people who cannot even see you. Stop explaining yourself to those who have already decided not to understand you. Stop giving energy to situations that don't deserve your attention. Your energy is sacred. Your peace is sacred. When you stop chasing, you got both. And that's when you realize you never needed to chase anything. You only needed to remember who you are. Caring less is emotional discipline, not indifference. There's a deep misunderstanding in our world today. People think that when you care less, it means you don't have emotions, you don't feel, or you don't love. But that's not true. Caring less doesn't mean you stop loving. It means you stop losing yourself in the process of loving. It means you've learned to separate emotion from reaction. It means you've learned that peace is worth more than being right, that your energy is worth more than chasing chaos. You see, emotional discipline is the art of mastering yourself in moments when everything in you wants to explode. It's when someone disrespects you and instead of reacting, you smile and walk away because you know that silence has more power than 1,000 arguments. It's when you care deeply, but you don't let that care turn into obsession or self-destruction. It's when you love with an open heart, but you don't beg to be loved in return. Emotional discipline is not coldness, it's maturity. Think about how much peace you've lost because you cared too much about things you couldn't control. How many nights you couldn't sleep because someone didn't reply? How many times you replayed a conversation in your head wondering if you said something wrong? That is emotional chaos. And chaos happens when we care without boundaries. When you start practicing emotional discipline, you start to understand that not everything deserves a reaction. Not everyone deserves a response. And not every situation deserves your energy. In daily life, we meet people who test our patience. Maybe it's a coworker who constantly tries to undermine you, or a friend who always brings drama. The old version of you would have fought back, tried to prove a point, or begged for peace. But when you evolve, when you learn emotional discipline, you simply observe. You understand that people act from their own pain, their own insecurities, their own fears. You don't take it personally anymore. That's not indifference. That's strength, because reacting gives them power, but staying calm keeps it in your hands. The truth is, when you care too much, you start trying to control everything, the outcome, the response, the perception. But the more you try to control, the more you lose control. The key is balance. You must learn to care enough to give your best, but not so much that you break when things don't go your way. Emotional discipline teaches you that you can love deeply, but still walk away when love turns toxic. You can support others without losing yourself in their storms. You can forgive without giving repeated chances to those who keep hurting you. Look at the people who seem calm no matter what happens. They're not emotionless, they've just trained their emotions. They've been through so much that they realized reacting doesn't solve anything. They've seen that peace is more valuable than proving a point. That's emotional intelligence. It's not about suppressing feelings, it's about managing them with wisdom. A simple daily example, imagine you're driving and someone cuts you off on the road. The instant emotion is anger. Your heart races, your hands tighten on the steering wheel. But what happens next defines your discipline. You can honk, yell, and let that person ruin your mood for hours. Or you can breathe, smile, and move on. That's the difference between caring emotionally and caring wisely. When you let small things control your emotions, you give away your peace for free. But when you care less about nonsense, you become untouchable. In relationships, emotional discipline is essential. Caring less doesn't mean you don't love the person anymore. It means you love them without losing respect for yourself. It's when you stop overthinking their every word or action and start focusing on how you feel when you're with them. It's when you stop begging for attention because you know that real love doesn't require chasing. Emotional discipline teaches you to observe patterns instead of believing promises. It teaches you that distance is sometimes the loudest form of self-respect. You also see it in professional life. You might work hard, stay loyal, give your best, and still not get recognized. Emotional discipline means you don't quit out of frustration, nor do you beg for validation. You keep building quietly, trusting that consistency will make noise one day. You don't care less about excellence. You care less about opinions. Because opinions fade, but results speak forever. Many people think detachment means not feeling anything. But detachment is the ability to feel everything deeply and still remain calm. It's being in the middle of chaos but choosing peace. It's hearing criticism but staying grounded in your purpose. It's watching people misunderstand you and still refusing to explain yourself over and over again. That's emotional maturity. You'll notice something powerful when you start caring less. Life becomes lighter. You stop walking around with invisible weights on your shoulders. You stop trying to control the uncontrollable. You stop giving energy to people who drain it. Your conversations become deeper. Your focus sharpens. Your inner peace grows. Because now your emotions serve you instead of sabotage you. Caring less is not about neglecting people or being numb. It's about choosing where your heart belongs. It's about deciding who gets access to your peace. Not everyone deserves to know your heart. Not every situation deserves your explanation. Not every insult deserves your reaction. Some things are best answered with silence and distance. The more you grow, the more you realize that the power of calmness is greater than the power of confrontation. You no longer need to shout to be heard or prove yourself to be seen. You simply become so grounded that your presence speaks louder than your words. Emotional discipline is quiet confidence. It doesn't seek attention, it commands it. The reason most people lose power is because they care emotionally but without control. They allow their feelings to dictate their decisions. They give permanent energy to temporary emotions. Caring less doesn't mean shutting down your heart. It means opening your mind. It means you feel everything but choose what deserves a reaction. That's wisdom. That's growth. That's the beginning of true emotional mastery. Attraction flows from alignment, not effort. People spend their entire lives trying to force things to happen. They chase opportunities. They chase love. They chase success. And in doing so, they forget one of the simplest truths of life. What's meant for you will never require you to beg. When you are aligned with your purpose, with your values, with your inner truth, the things that belong to you naturally find their way into your life. Attraction is not about running faster or working harder. It's about walking in the right direction. It's about being in tune with who you truly are and allowing your energy to call in what matches that frequency. Think of a radio station. You can't tune into a frequency that doesn't match your signal. No matter how much you twist the dial, if you're not aligned with the right frequency, all you'll hear is noise. Life works the same way. If you're not aligned with peace, you'll attract chaos. If you're not aligned with self-worth, you'll attract people who make you question your value. If you're not aligned with purpose, you'll attract distractions disguised as opportunities. Attraction is not magic, it's math. It's the equation of energy and intention meeting clarity and belief. You see this every day. A person who knows what they want, who moves with confidence and peace, somehow seems to have everything fall into place for them. It's not luck, it's alignment. Their actions, thoughts, and emotions are synchronized. They're not trying to impress anyone. They're not desperate for approval. They're just being authentic. And authenticity is magnetic. It pulls the right people, the right chances, and the right blessings closer, effortlessly. But most people are out of alignment because they're trying to force a version of themselves that isn't real. They're pretending to be who others want them to be, and that false energy blocks real attraction. Look at relationships. When you chase someone who isn't aligned with your energy, you end up exhausted. You give, you prove, you bend, you compromise, and still it doesn't work. Why? Because effort cannot replace alignment. When two people share similar values, goals, and emotional frequencies, there's no need to force connection. It flows naturally. Conversations feel light, presence feels peaceful, and time feels effortless. That's what true attraction feels like: calm, not chaotic. It doesn't come from trying harder. It comes from being more aligned with who you are. The same principle applies to success. Most people think hard work alone guarantees results, but that's not true. Many people work hard but still feel stuck because they're working hard in the wrong direction. Alignment means knowing what your purpose is and focusing your energy there. A person who is aligned doesn't chase 100 things. They master one. And because of that focus, they attract results faster than those who scatter their energy everywhere. When your work, your mindset, and your spirit are aligned, success finds you without you having to beg for it. A man wakes up every morning and rushes into his day, busy, anxious, multitasking, trying to force productivity. Another man starts his morning with stillness, with gratitude, with clarity. Both are putting in effort, but only one is aligned. And that alignment gives birth to flow. Things start happening for him instead of to him. When your energy is aligned, you stop chasing opportunities and start being recognized by them. You become the kind of person people want to work with, follow, and trust because your energy feels right. Alignment is the invisible foundation of every great life. When you're aligned, your words match your actions, your dreams match your discipline, your desires match your decisions. There's no inner conflict. There's no pretending. There's no war between what you want and what you do. That kind of clarity sends a strong signal into the world, and the universe responds to it. You can't attract peace while living in confusion. You can't attract abundance while thinking from scarcity. You can't attract love while doubting your own worth. The outside world mirrors your inner world always. Every time you feel resistance, when things aren't working no matter how hard you try, it's usually a sign that you're out of alignment. You might be chasing something that looks good but isn't meant for you. Maybe you're forcing a relationship that drains you, or holding on to a job that no longer inspires you. Alignment requires honesty. It asks you to stop lying to yourself about what you want and what you deserve. Because once you become honest with yourself, everything else begins to align naturally. Think about a river. It doesn't struggle to flow. It doesn't push against the rocks. It moves around them gracefully. That's alignment. You're still moving, but you're moving with the current of your truth, not against it. The more you try to force things, the more resistance you create. But when you relax into your purpose and act from that space, you begin to attract effortlessly. It doesn't mean you stop working hard. It means your effort now has direction. In daily life, you can feel the difference between forced effort and aligned flow. Forced effort feels heavy, stressful, and draining. Aligned effort feels natural, purposeful, and peaceful. Forced effort requires constant motivation. Aligned effort requires intention. When you're aligned, you don't wake up asking, how can I make this happen? You wake up saying, how can I be the person that this naturally happens for? And that small shift changes everything. People are drawn to aligned energy because it's rare. We live in a world full of noise. Everyone is trying to be seen, trying to be heard, trying to be validated. But alignment doesn't shout, it radiates. It doesn't chase, it draws in. When you walk in alignment, your presence carries something that words can't describe. It's calm, it's certain, it's grounded. That's why aligned people attract without effort. They're not trying to prove their worth, they're simply living it. The most powerful version of you is not the one who tries to control everything. It's the one who trusts that everything will align when you do. Attraction is the outcome of self-mastery. When you master your thoughts, your emotions, and your direction, you no longer need to force the world to notice you. The world naturally adjusts to the frequency you're on. Alignment is when your spirit and your actions finally speak the same language, and the world listens without you having to say a word. People respect what doesn't need their validation. This is one of the deepest truths about human behavior that most never learn. The moment you stop seeking approval is the moment you start earning respect. It's almost strange, isn't it? When you try to please people, they ignore you. But when you stop caring about their opinions, they start paying attention. That's because energy never lies. Desperation repels, confidence attracts. People can sense when you need their validation and they pull away. But when you stand firm in who you are, when your presence says, I know my worth, the world begins to notice. In life, too many people trade their authenticity for acceptance. They shrink themselves just to fit into rooms they were meant to outgrow. They hide their light because others can't handle its brightness. But here's the truth. When you don't need anyone to clap for you, that's when the applause begins. When you stop performing for attention, you start commanding respect. Respect doesn't come from pleasing people. It comes from being unshakably yourself in a world that's constantly trying to change you. Think about how we act when we're desperate for validation. We bend over backward to be liked. We overthink every move. We seek constant reassurance. And no matter how much we do, it's never enough. Because the moment you depend on people's validation, they control you. They hold your peace hostage. One compliment makes your day. One criticism destroys it. That's not freedom, that's emotional slavery. But when you stop chasing validation, you take your power back. You become untouchable because no one's opinion can add or subtract from who you already know you are. People respect those who set boundaries without guilt. When you say no without explaining yourself, you send a message. You are not desperate for approval. You are clear about your values. And that clarity is powerful. The strongest people are not loud or boastful. They're calm, grounded, and consistent. They don't argue to prove their point. Their actions prove it for them. They don't need validation because they already operate from self-awareness. And that kind of confidence can't be faked. Look around at the people you admire most. It could be a teacher, a leader, an artist, or even someone in your family. Chances are they don't chase attention, they attract it. Their respect doesn't come from what they say, but from how they live. They're comfortable being misunderstood. They know that not everyone will like them, and that's okay. Because they've realized something most never do. You can't please people and fulfill your purpose at the same time. In everyday life, you can feel this truth in small moments. You're in a group conversation and someone says something to provoke you. You could defend yourself, argue, prove your point. But instead, you smile, stay silent, and walk away. That moment of restraint earns more respect than any argument ever could. People may not admit it out loud, but they feel it. Your calm is power. Your lack of reaction shows mastery. When you no longer need to respond to every opinion, people begin to respect your silence more than your words. Another example. Imagine someone who's constantly showing off, always talking about their achievements, their possessions, their success. They crave attention. At first, people might listen, but soon it turns into noise. Now think of someone quiet, composed, who doesn't talk much but delivers results consistently. That person doesn't ask for respect, they earn it. People talk about them when they're not in the room because their presence carries weight. Respect gravitates toward those who don't demand it. The truth is, validation is like a drug. The more you chase it, the more you need it. But the moment you stop depending on it, you become free. And that freedom changes how the world sees you. People start to respect you because they realize they can't manipulate you with praise or destroy you with criticism. You're solid. And nothing is more intimidating to the insecure than someone who doesn't need validation. In relationships, this truth is even clearer. When you chase someone's approval, they lose interest. When you pull back and focus on your growth, suddenly they notice you. Why? Because respect grows in the soil of self-assurance. When you no longer try to convince people to choose you, you become more attractive. Your independence becomes magnetic, and it's not a game, it's alignment. People respect those who respect themselves. Even in your career, when you stop working for applause and start working from purpose, everything changes. You don't need constant recognition because your drive is internal. You stop worrying about who's watching and focus on what you're building. And the irony is, that's when people start watching. That's when they start respecting you because they can feel that your motivation is pure. You're not performing for them, you're performing for purpose. People respect strength, but not the kind that's loud and aggressive. They respect the quiet strength of those who know who they are and where they're going. When you walk into a room without needing to be noticed, people notice you. When you speak only when necessary, your words carry weight. When you can walk away from drama without looking back, people realize you can't be controlled. That's what true respect feels like. It's earned, not demanded. The biggest mistake people make is thinking that validation equals value. But validation is temporary, value is eternal. One day people will praise you, the next they'll criticize you. If you base your worth on that, you'll be emotionally exhausted forever. But when your worth comes from within, external opinions lose power. You understand that respect follows authenticity, not approval. And authenticity requires courage. The courage to stand alone, to be misunderstood, to stay true even when it's unpopular. In the end, people don't respect perfection. They respect self-respect. They respect the person who can say, "This is who I am with or without your validation." They respect consistency, integrity, and authenticity. And when you stop needing their validation, you stop shrinking yourself for their comfort. You rise. And the moment you rise, you become the standard. People respect what doesn't ask to be respected. Because true power never begs to be seen. It simply cannot be ignored. Silence is more powerful than constant explanation. Most people think power is in words, in talking, in convincing others to understand them. They believe that if they explain enough, if they talk long enough, if they defend themselves hard enough, people will finally see their truth. But life teaches you something different. You learn that silence carries a power that words can never hold. Silence speaks in a language that explanation cannot translate. It's not weakness. It's wisdom. It's the strength that comes when you no longer need to prove your worth or justify your peace. Every time you try to explain yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you, you drain yourself. You lose energy trying to convince people who have already made up their minds. That's why silence is strength. It protects your energy. You start to realize that not everyone deserves access to your explanations. You don't owe people a full story about your choices, your boundaries, your healing, or your distance. Sometimes silence is the answer, because silence doesn't argue. Silence doesn't beg. Silence doesn't need validation. It simply stands in truth. There comes a point in life where you stop trying to make everyone understand your side. You just let them think what they want to think. Not because you don't care, but because you've learned that understanding is not something you can force. People see from their level of awareness, not from your level of truth. If someone wants to believe you're wrong, your words won't change their mind. If someone wants to believe lies, no explanation can undo that. But silence unsettles them. Silence makes them reflect. Silence makes them question. And that is its quiet power. In daily life, think about how often people try to pull you into arguments. Someone criticizes you, someone spreads a rumor, someone tests your patience. The natural instinct is to defend yourself, to speak, to prove. But when you choose silence instead, you rise above the noise. Your calmness becomes your statement. It's like being in a storm and deciding not to get wet. Your silence tells them, you no longer have access to my peace. And that silence echoes louder than any defense ever could. Imagine being at work and someone takes credit for your idea. The old version of you might have argued, demanded recognition, explained every detail of what you contributed. But the wiser version of you knows that time reveals everything. Your consistency will show the truth. Your silence doesn't mean you accept injustice. It means you trust your value enough to let results speak louder than your mouth. Silence is not surrender, it's strategy. You see, people who constantly explain themselves are often misunderstood as insecure. Those who remain silent are often seen as mysterious, confident, and strong, because silence makes people wonder. It forces them to fill the gaps with their own thoughts. And in that space, you control the narrative without saying a word. When you stop reacting, you start commanding respect. People can argue with your words, but they can't fight your silence. In relationships, silence can heal or protect. Sometimes the best way to deal with an argument is to stop explaining and start observing. The more you explain yourself to someone who refuses to listen, the more you teach them they can ignore your words and still get your energy. But when you go silent, you take your power back. Silence says, you don't get to drain me anymore. It says, I've said all that needed to be said, and now I'll let my absence speak. People remember silence. They forget arguments, but they remember the day you stopped explaining. There's also a deep peace that comes when you choose silence over reaction. Not every battle is worth fighting. Not every opinion deserves a reply. When you stop engaging in meaningless debates, your mind becomes quieter, your heart lighter. Your silence becomes your protection from negativity. And in that stillness, you grow. You start to see that not responding doesn't mean you lost. It means you've evolved. Daily life gives countless examples of silence being more powerful than explanation. You might see it in a leader who listens more than they speak. Their calm presence commands more respect than the loudest voice in the room. Or in a parent who, instead of arguing with a rebellious child, simply sets boundaries and walks away. That silence teaches more than shouting ever could. Or in a friend who distances themselves quietly instead of explaining why. They've learned that closure is not always a conversation. Sometimes it's peace. The most powerful people in the world don't waste words. They speak when it matters, not when they're provoked. They understand that silence holds weight. It creates mystery, control, and focus. When you remain silent, you are not empty. You are listening, observing, and conserving energy. Your silence allows you to see things clearly that noise often hides. Because when you stop talking, you start hearing what life is trying to tell you. Silence is also a mirror. It reflects strength back at those who try to break you. When you refuse to respond to negativity, you expose their weakness. You show them that their chaos can't disturb your peace. People who want to control you will always hate your silence because it removes their power. Silence says, you don't get to control my emotions anymore. And that's when you truly win, not by winning arguments, but by refusing to engage in them. When you explain too much, you teach people to doubt you. But when you stay silent, you teach them to reflect. Silence makes people uncomfortable because it forces them to face themselves. It makes them realize that you're not seeking their approval anymore, that you've moved beyond needing to be understood. And that's when your presence starts to carry authority. It takes great emotional maturity to stay silent when everything in you wants to speak. But that's where growth lies, in restraint, in composure, in patience. You start to learn that peace is not found in being heard, it's found in being centered. The most peaceful moments in your life will come when you stop explaining and start existing. Your energy will attract those who understand you without explanation, and your silence will protect you from those who never will. When you truly understand silence, you realize it's not the absence of communication. It's the highest form of it. Silence tells the truth without saying it. Silence shows strength without proving it. Silence reveals character without defending it. And when you master silence, you master yourself. Detachment frees you from emotional slavery. Most people live chained to what others think, feel, or do. Their happiness rises and falls based on someone else's mood, approval, or attention. But when you learn the art of detachment, you begin to see life differently. You stop giving your peace away so easily. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop depending. It means your emotions are no longer prisoners of circumstance. It means you have found the strength to love, to work, to serve, and to dream without letting the outcome define your worth. Imagine you're in a relationship where you constantly worry about being left, where every text, every silence, every delay feels like a storm. That's emotional slavery. You've given someone else the remote control to your happiness. But when you practice detachment, you take that control back. You start to understand that love is not possession. You can love deeply and still let someone be free. You can give your best and still walk away with peace if it doesn't work out. Detachment is not coldness, it's clarity. It's saying, I choose peace over panic, growth over grasping, and purpose over pleasing. In daily life, detachment looks like walking through chaos and not letting it live inside you. It's sitting in traffic and not letting impatience rule your mood. It's losing a job and saying, this is not the end. It's a redirection. It's hearing criticism and choosing not to internalize it as truth. When you're detached, you don't get pulled into every storm that passes by. You observe, you respond, but you don't drown. You start to realize that peace is not something you chase. It's something you protect. Detachment is power disguised as calmness. People will test you, disappoint you, even betray you. They'll expect a reaction. They'll expect anger, breakdown, or desperation. But when you stay grounded, when you respond with quiet strength, they don't know what to do with you. Because detachment breaks the cycle of emotional control. You no longer give others the ability to shake your foundation. You learn to stand firm even when everything around you trembles. And that's when you become unshakable. Think about how often we attach our happiness to temporary things. We say, when I get that job, I'll be happy. When I buy that car. Or when they love me back. But every time we say that, we're placing our peace in something that can be taken away. Detachment reminds you that real happiness doesn't come from outcomes. It comes from alignment. It's not about what happens to you. It's about who you choose to be when it happens. When you stop chasing validation, you find freedom. When you stop attaching to results, you find rest. Some people think detachment means indifference, but it's the opposite. It's the purest form of strength. It's saying, I can give my all without losing myself. It's loving people, but not losing your identity in them. It's pursuing success, but not letting failure define your worth. It's caring deeply, but not letting fear control your decisions. When you detach, you move from reaction to response, from chaos to clarity, from fear to faith. Picture this, you're working hard for a promotion. You stay late, you give your best, you visualize the reward. But then, someone else gets it. The old version of you might feel defeated, angry, worthless. But the detached version of you knows that rejection is simply redirection. It's a door closing because a better one is waiting. You thank life for the lesson and keep moving. That's detachment. It's trusting the process, even when the process doesn't look like progress. Detachment also teaches emotional maturity. When someone doesn't value you, you stop begging for attention. When someone misunderstands you, you stop explaining endlessly. You realize that people can only meet you at the level of their understanding, not yours. And that realization frees you, because you no longer waste energy trying to control what's outside your control. You stop chasing closure and start creating peace. Everyday life is filled with moments that test your attachment. You check social media and see someone else succeeding, and jealousy creeps in. You see someone living the life you want, and comparison poisons your joy. Detachment whispers, what's meant for you cannot miss you. It reminds you to celebrate others while staying focused on your path. It reminds you that your timing is different, your journey unique. It tells you that your self-worth doesn't depend on anyone's timeline but your own. Detachment doesn't make you heartless, it makes you fearless. It allows you to walk away from things that no longer serve you without guilt. It gives you the strength to say no when you used to say yes just to be liked. It teaches you to listen to your intuition over opinions. And most importantly, it brings you closer to your true self. The self that isn't defined by approval, applause, or attention. There's freedom in knowing that you don't need to hold everything so tightly. When you let go, you make room for better things to arrive. The tighter you hold, the more you lose. But the moment you release control, you find that what's meant to stay will stay effortlessly. That's the beauty of detachment. It doesn't take away love or ambition. It just removes desperation. It turns fear into faith. It turns anxiety into assurance. In your daily routine, practice detachment by observing instead of absorbing. When someone speaks harshly, don't take it personally. When plans fall apart, trust that something greater is unfolding. When success comes, stay humble. When failure comes, stay steady. Live with open hands, not clenched fists. Because what's yours will find you, and what isn't will fade. And that fading will no longer scare you, because detachment has taught you that loss is just transformation in disguise. Every great teacher, from philosophers to spiritual leaders, understood this truth. Freedom begins where attachment ends. Detachment is not running away from life. It's living it fully, but lightly. It's walking through every season with grace, knowing that no moment, no person, no possession defines your essence. You start to live with flow instead of force, and that's when peace stops being temporary and becomes your natural state. So when life tests you, when people leave, when opportunities close, when expectations fail, remember that detachment is not giving up. It's letting go of control. It's choosing to rise above the noise and hold your peace like a treasure. Because once you learn to detach, nothing can enslave you again. Not opinions, not outcomes, not emotions. You become free in the truest sense of the word. Your value increases when you stop discounting yourself. Every time you shrink to fit into someone's comfort zone, every time you silence your truth just to be accepted, you are putting a discount tag on your worth. And when you do that often enough, the world starts to believe that's all you're worth. People treat you according to the price you put on yourself. If you make yourself cheap, they'll bargain with your time, your energy, your love. But the moment you raise your value, the moment you decide that you are no longer available for anything less than respect, everything changes. The same people who ignored you begin to notice you. The same doors that were closed begin to open. Because people always sense confidence. They are drawn to those who know their worth. Imagine walking into a store. You see two watches. One is displayed carelessly with a price tag that says $50. The other is placed in a glass case with a soft light on it valued at $5,000. Both tell time, but one is treated as luxury and the other as common. The difference is not in function, it's in perception. And in life, that perception starts with you. When you carry yourself like a limited edition, the world treats you as one. When you treat yourself like you're easily replaceable, people start to believe it. Many people spend their lives trying to earn validation from those who can't even see their light. They overextend, overgive, over-apologize. They tolerate disrespect because they fear losing people. But the truth is, you don't lose people when you set boundaries. You lose those who are benefiting from your lack of them. And that's a blessing, not a loss. When you stop discounting yourself, you make space for people who see your full price and don't flinch. Think about how often you've said yes when your heart wanted to say no. You agreed to favors that drained you, relationships that hurt you, jobs that undervalued you. All because you were afraid of being seen as difficult. But difficulty is not the problem, devaluing yourself is. You teach people how to treat you by what you allow, by what you accept, and by what you reinforce. When you stop offering discounts on your worth, you stop attracting those who only came for the sale. In daily life, this looks like speaking up when something doesn't feel right, walking away when you're not respected, and refusing to beg for love that should be given freely. It's saying, I'm not available for disrespect without guilt. It's understanding that rejection doesn't lower your value. It redirects it. Sometimes life removes people who can't afford your worth. And instead of chasing after them, you stand tall, knowing that diamonds don't chase buyers. They wait for those who recognize their brilliance. There was once a woman who spent years in a job where her boss never promoted her. She worked overtime, did the work of 3 people, smiled through exhaustion, and thought that if she proved herself enough, she'd finally be recognized. But she never was. One day she realized her mistake. She had discounted her value for too long. She decided to leave. Within months, she found another job that paid her double and treated her with respect. Her skill didn't change, her confidence did. That's what happens when you stop giving your value away at clearance prices. You must understand that confidence is not arrogance. Arrogance says, I'm better than everyone else. Confidence says, I know who I am, and I refuse to be treated as less. When you stand in that kind of truth, people sense it. They know they can't play games with your time or manipulate your kindness. Your energy speaks before your words do. And the ones who truly value you will rise to meet your standard. In relationships, this is powerful. When you chase someone who doesn't see your worth, you end up begging for crumbs of affection. But when you stop discounting yourself, when you walk away from half-hearted love, something changes. You begin to attract people who don't need convincing to stay. Because when you know your worth, you don't chase, you attract. You don't argue for your place in someone's life. You embody it. It's the same in friendships. The moment you stop being the one who always reaches out, always fixes things, always carries the weight of the relationship, you'll see who truly values you. Real friends will meet you halfway. Those who were there only for convenience will fade away. And though it may hurt at first, you'll realize that peace feels better than forced connections. Even in business, your value determines how you're treated. Some people accept less pay, more workload, and no recognition because they think it's humble. But humility is not poverty of self-worth. Humility is quiet confidence. It's knowing your worth so deeply that you don't need to scream it. But you'll never settle for less than it deserves. When you stop discounting your value, you stop chasing opportunities that drain you and start attracting ones that match your excellence. Look at your daily routine. How do you speak to yourself? Do you encourage yourself or constantly criticize? Do you treat your goals like they matter or like they're impossible dreams? Because every thought is a price tag. When you tell yourself you're not enough, you're marking yourself down. When you speak with belief and discipline, you're raising your value. And the world reflects that back to you. People will always test your boundaries. They'll see how much of you they can take before you say stop. But when you know your worth, you don't fear confrontation. You don't explain your standards, you embody them. Your silence becomes powerful. Your distance becomes your statement. Because the strongest message you can send is quiet consistency in your value. There's a story about a man who took his old car to sell. The dealer offered him very little. Disappointed, he went to a luxury collector who saw the same car and said, "This is a classic, I'll pay a fortune for it." The man realized the car wasn't undervalued. He was offering it to the wrong crowd. Sometimes you're not being undervalued because you're not worth it. You're just standing in the wrong place. When you stop discounting yourself, you stop begging for validation in places that can't appreciate you. When you carry yourself with dignity, you shift the entire energy around you. Your tone changes, your walk changes, your decisions change. You stop over-explaining, you stop chasing, you stop settling. And the right people, the right opportunities, the right environments begin to find you naturally. Because when you respect your own value, you teach the world to do the same. Peace is the highest form of power. People often mistake power for noise, for dominance, for the ability to shout the loudest or control others. But true power is silent. True power is steady. It's the calm in the middle of chaos, the quiet strength that doesn't need to prove itself. Peace is what keeps you grounded when everything around you is shaking. It's what allows you to walk through storms without letting the storm enter you. Anyone can raise their voice, but only the strong can stay calm when the world is on fire. In daily life, you see people lose their peace so easily. Someone cuts them off in traffic, and suddenly they're boiling with anger. A coworker disrespects them, and their whole day collapses. A person they love disappoints them, and they fall apart. That's because they've tied their peace to things they can't control. But when you understand that peace is power, you stop reacting to everything. You start protecting your energy like it's gold, because it is. Think about it. When someone tries to argue with you and you refuse to engage, who truly has the power? Not the one yelling, but the one who stays composed. When people try to pull you into drama and you don't take the bait, you win. Because real power is not about controlling others. It's about controlling yourself. Peace gives you clarity, and clarity gives you mastery. When your mind is calm, your decisions become sharper, your actions become purposeful, and your presence commands respect without you saying a word. Look at the leaders who left real impact in history. The strongest among them were never frantic. They carried peace like armor. They didn't chase attention. They didn't rush to react. They understood that peace creates vision. Because when your mind is calm, you see things others can't. When others panic, you plan. When others react, you reflect. And that's how you move with strategy instead of emotion. Peace allows you to stay in control when everyone else is losing control. Think of a river. It doesn't fight to flow. It simply moves around obstacles. It doesn't rush to prove its direction. It just keeps going. That's what peace does in your life. When you're peaceful, you don't need to force outcomes. You understand that life's timing is not always yours to dictate. You do your part and let things unfold. Peace teaches you patience, and patience always brings results. The person who stays calm through delay, through rejection, through uncertainty always wins in the end. You might think peace is passive, but it's not. Peace is strength under discipline. It's the refusal to let external chaos disturb your internal stability. In relationships, peace is choosing silence over unnecessary arguments. In business, peace is walking away from toxic deals even when money tempts you. In your personal life, peace is learning to let go instead of holding grudges. When you carry peace, you no longer chase revenge or validation because you know that anything that costs you your peace is too expensive. People will try to test your peace. They will poke your buttons, provoke your emotions, and expect a reaction. But your power lies in your non-reaction. Your stillness will confuse them. Your calmness will make them wonder what you know that they don't. That's the kind of quiet confidence that shakes the room without raising a sound. Because nothing is more intimidating than a person who can't be provoked. Daily life is full of small tests that reveal the strength of your peace. When you're waiting in a long line and you choose patience instead of frustration, that's power. When someone criticizes you and you choose to respond with grace instead of defensiveness, that's power. When plans fall apart and you choose to adapt instead of complain, that's power. Peace is not the absence of problems, it's the presence of perspective. It's saying, I may not control what happens, but I control how I respond. Imagine a soldier in battle. Everyone around him is panicking, shouting, losing focus. But he stays calm, assesses the situation, and acts with precision. Who do you think will survive longer? The calm one, the peaceful one. Because panic blinds you, but peace sharpens you. The same principle applies to life. Peace keeps your mind clear, your emotions balanced, and your energy directed toward what truly matters. Many people chase success thinking it will bring peace. But the truth is, you need peace to sustain success. Without peace, wealth becomes worry, fame becomes pressure, relationships become chaos. Peace is not something you find after achieving everything. It's something you must build before anything. It's the foundation that keeps everything standing. A peaceful heart builds a powerful life because it's not shaken by temporary storms. Peace also gives you emotional intelligence. When you have peace, you listen more than you speak, you understand more than you judge, and you respond more than you react. You stop trying to win every argument because you realize not every battle deserves your energy. Peace teaches you to value your mental space. It makes you choose silence not because you're weak, but because you're wise. There's a reason peaceful people attract attention. They radiate something rare. In a world full of noise and ego, peace stands out. It's magnetic. People feel safe around it. They trust it because peace is not just a feeling. It's an energy, a presence, a form of quiet power that influences others without force. Look at your own life and notice how your greatest mistakes often came from moments when you lost your peace. You said things you didn't mean, made decisions you later regretted, reacted from fear instead of reason. That's because when peace leaves, chaos takes over. But when peace stays, even the worst moments become manageable. You start to realize that no situation can defeat a calm spirit. Peace is not built overnight. It's a practice. It's choosing every day to protect your mind from negativity, to walk away from drama, to forgive instead of hold grudges, to rest when you're tired instead of running on anger. Peace is knowing that you don't have to prove anything to anyone. You can let others talk. You can let others misunderstand you because you're not in a race to convince anyone. Your peace is your proof. You'll reach a point in life where your peace becomes your priority. You'll say no without guilt, disconnect without explanation, and choose solitude over fake company. And in that stillness, you'll find more strength than any argument, more clarity than any debate, more happiness than any approval. Because once you taste true peace, chaos will never feel like home again. Self-awareness builds authority without arrogance. The moment you begin to truly understand yourself, everything in your life starts to shift. Self-awareness is not about thinking too highly of yourself. It's about knowing exactly who you are, what you stand for, and what you bring to the table. It's walking into a room and not needing to be the loudest voice to be heard. It's leading people not by force, but by presence. When you're self-aware, you don't need to convince anyone that you're valuable. They can feel it. Many people confuse confidence with arrogance because they've never seen quiet power before. Arrogance screams, but self-awareness whispers. Arrogance says, I know it all. While self-awareness says, I know myself. That's the difference between someone who needs validation and someone who carries it within. Arrogance tries to dominate. Self-awareness influences. One chases attention, the other earns respect. And when you start living with self-awareness, you begin to build an authority that cannot be shaken by opinions or praise. In daily life, think of a person who is always defensive, always proving, always competing. They need others to lose so they can feel like they've won. That's arrogance, fragile, insecure, easily threatened. Now picture someone calm, steady, composed. They listen more than they speak. They're confident but humble, assertive but kind. They don't boast, but when they speak, people stop to listen. That's self-awareness. It's not loud, but it's powerful. It's not prideful, but it's unshakable. When you know yourself, you stop performing for approval. You stop being addicted to validation. You no longer measure your worth through the eyes of others. You become comfortable in your own skin, and that comfort radiates authority. People follow those who are sure of themselves, not because they shout commands, because they inspire trust. A self-aware person doesn't need to convince others they're right. Their actions, their consistency, and their integrity do the talking. You see it in the workplace all the time. One person tries to control everyone, constantly reminding others of their title or achievements. They lead through fear, not respect. Another person quietly observes, supports their team, takes responsibility for mistakes, and uplifts others. Yet, when problems arise, everyone turns to that person. That's authority born of self-awareness, because people don't follow arrogance. They follow authenticity. Self-awareness is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself correctly. It's knowing your strengths so you can use them wisely, and knowing your weaknesses so they don't use you. It's admitting when you're wrong without losing confidence, and standing firm when you're right without being proud. That kind of balance makes you magnetic. People can feel when you're real, and that's what gives you authority that arrogance can never imitate. Think about relationships. Arrogance destroys connection because it makes everything about control and ego. But self-awareness builds connection because it creates understanding. When you're self-aware, you can say, I was wrong, or I understand how that made you feel, without it hurting your pride. That's power. The power to take responsibility without losing your dignity. And people respect that deeply. It shows maturity, confidence, and emotional strength. Imagine two friends having an argument. One refuses to listen, keeps interrupting, and insists they're right. The other pauses, listens, and responds calmly. I see where you're coming from, but here's how I felt. Who do you think has the real authority in that moment? Not the loud one, but the grounded one. Because the one who is self-aware is not fighting to win an argument. They're focused on understanding. And understanding is a far greater strength than pride. Self-awareness also helps you manage your emotions instead of letting them manage you. It teaches you to pause before reacting, to think before speaking, and to respond from clarity instead of impulse. When you can control yourself, you become unshakable. That's why self-awareness builds authority. It gives you mastery over your inner world. And when you master your inner world, the outer world starts to follow. There's a quiet power that comes from knowing yourself deeply. When you know what triggers you, you stop giving others the power to control your mood. When you know your values, you stop compromising them for temporary comfort. When you know your purpose, you stop being distracted by what everyone else is doing. Self-awareness turns confusion into clarity and clarity into direction. It gives you an inner compass that arrogance can never have. Think of it like this: arrogance stands on ego, but self-awareness stands on foundation. Ego can crumble with one insult, one failure, one rejection. But foundation stands firm through storms. A self-aware person can face criticism without collapsing, can hear praise without inflating, and can succeed without losing humility. Because they're rooted in who they are, not in how others see them. In daily examples, you can see this truth everywhere. The best teachers, the best leaders, the best creators, they all operate from self-awareness. They know their strengths, but they also know their blind spots. They don't fear being wrong because their identity isn't built on perfection. They keep learning, they keep growing, they keep evolving, and that humility becomes their power. It's why they lead naturally without demanding followers. Self-awareness also builds emotional intelligence. The ability to sense what others need without being told. It helps you communicate better, connect deeper, and make wiser choices. People who lack self-awareness often sabotage themselves without realizing it. They argue when they should listen. They assume when they should ask. They react when they should reflect. But when you're self-aware, you can step back, observe yourself, and adjust. You don't let pride blind you from progress. Every great transformation begins with self-awareness. You can't change what you don't acknowledge. When you finally see your patterns, the way you think, react, and respond, you begin to break cycles that once trapped you. You stop blaming the world and start taking responsibility. And that's where your authority begins. Because authority doesn't come from dominating others. It comes from mastering yourself. Self-awareness makes you powerful without being prideful. It teaches you that strength isn't about being right all the time. It's about being real all the time. It gives you confidence without comparison, purpose without pressure, and influence without intimidation. People feel your energy, they sense your authenticity, and that's what makes them trust you. When you walk in that level of awareness, you don't chase authority. You attract it. You don't force respect. You embody it. And that is the kind of power no arrogance can imitate. When you live in purpose, what you desire starts moving toward you. It's not magic, it's alignment. Life begins to respond to a person who knows where they are going. It's like the entire universe starts rearranging itself to make space for someone who is walking in their calling. When you live in purpose, doors that once seemed impossible begin to open. People who were once distant start showing up to help. Opportunities that once felt out of reach suddenly appear in your path. Not because everything got easier, but because you got clearer. Clarity is the magnet for blessings, and purpose is the language the universe understands. When you live in purpose, you stop chasing and start attracting. You stop begging for attention because your presence begins to speak louder than your words. You stop forcing outcomes because your faith replaces your fear. It's not about trying to control life anymore. It's about flowing with it. Imagine a river. It doesn't struggle to move forward. It simply flows in the direction it's meant to go. When you live in purpose, you become like that river. You stop fighting the current of life and start trusting it to carry you to the destination that's meant for you. Think about how many people wake up every day without direction. They run from one thing to another, chasing money, fame, validation. Anything that makes them feel alive for a moment. But no matter how much they achieve, they still feel empty. Because fulfillment doesn't come from what you do occasionally. It comes from living in purpose daily. Purpose fills the void that success can't. Purpose gives meaning to the grind, peace to the chaos, and direction to the confusion. Imagine a man who wakes up every morning dreading his job. He feels stuck, unappreciated, and restless. He wants more, but he doesn't know what that more is. One day he decides to step back and ask himself, what am I really meant to do? He remembers that he always loved teaching others, helping people grow. He begins volunteering to mentor young professionals. Suddenly his energy shifts. He feels alive again. Soon after, someone offers him a full-time coaching role. That's not coincidence, that's purpose creating a path. Because once you step into alignment, life begins to meet you halfway. The reason so many people feel stuck is not because they lack talent. It's because they lack direction. They're busy doing everything except the one thing they were born to do. And when you're out of alignment with your purpose, everything feels like a struggle. You fight for recognition, you chase opportunities, you try to prove yourself over and over again. But when you're in purpose, you don't have to fight for what's yours. It finds you. Because purpose has its own gravity. It pulls everything meant for you closer and pushes everything not meant for you away. Look at nature. Every seed carries its purpose inside of it. An apple seed doesn't wake up wondering if it should become a rose. It already knows what it's designed to produce. It doesn't compare, it doesn't compete. It simply grows into what it was created to be. And because of that, it attracts exactly what it needs: sunlight, water, soil, nourishment. That's how purpose works. When you live in yours, the right resources start appearing. The right people start showing up. The right timing unfolds naturally. You don't need to force growth. You just need to stay planted in your purpose. You can't live in purpose if you're too busy living in comparison. Many people delay their destiny because they're distracted by someone else's. They measure their worth by another person's success story, forgetting that their own story was written differently for a reason. Your purpose doesn't compete. It completes. It's not meant to look like anyone else's journey. When you accept that, you stop envying other people's blessings and start preparing for your own. In daily life, purpose brings calm to your chaos. Imagine a woman running a business. At first, she's anxious, trying to impress everyone. She copies trends, follows what others do, and constantly worries about failing. But one day, she decides to focus only on serving from her heart, doing what she's truly passionate about. The moment she does, her energy changes. Her work begins to attract the right clients. Her brand starts growing naturally. And she realizes that peace is the real profit. That's what living in purpose does. It replaces anxiety with assurance. When you live in purpose, rejection no longer feels like failure. It feels like redirection. Every no becomes a signpost guiding you toward your whys. Doors that close are not punishments, they're protection. People who leave are not losses, they're lessons. Purpose teaches you to trust that what's meant for you will find you, even if it takes time. And while others panic in uncertainty, you learn to rest in faith. You understand that delay doesn't mean denial. It means preparation. Think about how many times life seemed unfair, yet later you realize why it had to happen that way. Maybe you lost a job that made you miserable, only to find a career that fulfilled you. Maybe a relationship ended, only to make space for someone who truly saw your worth. When you live in purpose, every detour becomes divine direction. Every heartbreak becomes a doorway to growth. Because purpose turns pain into power and waiting into wisdom. Living in purpose doesn't mean life gets easier. It means life gets clearer. Your obstacles won't disappear, but they'll start to make sense. You'll stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this teaching me? Your struggles will no longer define you. They'll refine you. You'll realize that everything you go through is connected to everything you're becoming. People who live in purpose move differently. They walk with confidence, not because everything is perfect, but because they trust that everything is connected. They're not controlled by fear or doubt, because they know they're part of something bigger than themselves. That's why even in silence, they shine. Even in struggle, they grow. Even in delay, they believe, because they know purpose doesn't rush. It unfolds. When you live in purpose, you stop trying to predict the future and start preparing for it. You stop begging for blessings and start becoming the person capable of handling them. You start realizing that what you seek is also seeking you, but it can't find you until you stand where you're meant to be. The universe won't deliver what belongs to your purpose if you're hiding in your comfort zone. Life only meets you at the level of your obedience to your calling. When you live in purpose, what you desire starts moving toward you, not because it suddenly appeared, but because you finally became the person capable of recognizing it when it arrived. You attract what matches your energy, your vision, your faith. Purpose tunes your heart to the right frequency so that everything meant for you can hear you calling. It's not luck, it's alignment. When you live from that place, your journey changes forever. In the end, everything you've been searching for was never outside of you. It was waiting within you, buried under the noise of your fears, the weight of other people's opinions, and the pressure to prove yourself. You don't find peace by chasing what runs from you. You find peace by becoming what attracts it. Life has never been about running faster than everyone else. It's been about walking in alignment with your purpose. When you understand that, you stop moving out of desperation and start moving out of direction. You begin to realize that you were never behind, you were being prepared. Every delay, every disappointment, every closed door was shaping you for something bigger than you could see. There's a moment in every person's life when they must decide whether to keep chasing approval or start walking in authenticity. When you choose authenticity, you may lose some people, but you'll find yourself. And that trade is worth everything. Because the day you stop chasing what's not meant for you is the day you start attracting what's destined for you. When you no longer beg to be seen, you start shining naturally. When you stop explaining your worth, the world begins to recognize it. You become a force that doesn't have to fight for attention, because your peace becomes your power and your silence becomes your strength. The truth is, you don't have to chase love, respect, or success. You just have to become the person who naturally attracts those things. Love flows to those who give it freely without fear. Respect comes to those who carry themselves with quiet confidence. Success gravitates to those who stay consistent in the shadows long before the spotlight finds them. It's not about luck, it's about alignment, discipline, and belief. The world doesn't respond to noise, it responds to energy. When your energy is rooted in peace and purpose, everything meant for you will come closer without effort. Remember, people can feel your energy before they hear your words. You can walk into a room and say nothing, yet your presence will speak volumes. That's what happens when you know who you are. You don't need validation, you radiate certainty. You don't need to convince anyone because you've already convinced yourself. And that kind of confidence is magnetic. It draws everything in its rightful place closer to you. When you live in that flow, you no longer panic when something leaves because you understand that what is yours cannot miss you. And what misses you was never yours. Life becomes peaceful when you stop fighting for things that were never designed to stay. Stop begging for spaces that shrink you. Stop watering relationships that drain you. Stop chasing opportunities that make you lose your identity. There is a higher version of you waiting on the other side of your surrender. Sometimes walking away is not weakness, it's wisdom. Sometimes silence is not avoidance, it's power. When you stop forcing things, you make room for what fits naturally. And when what's meant for you arrives, you'll realize why everything else had to fail. One day, you'll look back and understand that every unanswered prayer was protection. Every delay was direction. Every heartbreak was redirection. Life wasn't punishing you, it was preparing you. It was stripping away everything that was blocking your purpose. You weren't losing, you were learning. You weren't stuck, you were being strengthened. Every storm you went through didn't destroy you. It revealed you. Because storms don't come to break you. They come to show you what's been unshakable all along. Don't let the noise of the world drown out the whisper of your purpose. You were created with intention, and until you walk in that, nothing else will ever satisfy you. You can have all the money, followers, and fame, but without purpose, you'll still feel empty. Purpose gives your pain meaning and your struggle direction. And once you find it, no setback can stop you because you realize that even in your losses, you're still being led somewhere greater. When you live with that understanding, your peace becomes untouchable. Stop chasing closure. Start creating peace. Stop waiting for permission. Start walking in confidence. Stop trying to fix what's not yours to fix. When you care less about control, you gain more power over your emotions. When you detach from outcomes, you gain clarity over direction. When you stop trying to please everyone, you finally please yourself. And that's when you become truly unstoppable. When your self-worth is no longer negotiable and your happiness no longer depends on anyone else's approval. You have to reach a point where you say, if it costs my peace, it's too expensive. Because peace is not a luxury, it's a foundation. You cannot build a purposeful life on a restless mind. Every great leader, every world changer, every person who left an impact learned how to master peace before they mastered anything else. Peace is what allows you to think clearly, to move wisely, and to endure patiently. It's what allows you to keep standing when everything around you is shaking. The world respects people who know how to stay calm in chaos. They don't react, they respond. They don't chase, they attract. They don't beg, they build. They don't break, they bend. And through it all, they remain grounded because their strength doesn't come from circumstance. It comes from conviction. That's the kind of person who changes lives, not by what they do, but by who they are. You were not born to chase approval, you were born to carry authority. You were not created to run after things, you were created to rise above them. When you finally understand your worth, you'll realize that nothing in this world has the power to control you unless you give it permission. Your peace is your power. Your purpose is your compass. Your self-respect is your crown. Wear it with quiet confidence. So when you walk out into the world, walk with your head high, not because life is perfect, but because you are at peace with who you are becoming. Let your presence remind others that they don't have to chase to be chosen. Let your silence speak louder than your noise. Let your calmness confuse the chaos. And when people ask how you do it, smile and say, I stopped chasing and everything started finding me. Because when you care less about proving yourself, you become powerful beyond measure. The less you chase, the more you attract. The less you beg, the more you receive. The less you fear, the more you become. And when you finally reach that place of inner stillness, you'll realize you never had to chase anything because everything meant for you was already on its way.